The officer who humiliated a man with a rusty bike without knowing, he was the police commissioner. This incident exposed the rotten core of the system and triggered a chain of events that shook the city to its core. What follows will astound even the most seasoned observers. But let's start at the beginning. Marcus Williams pushed his old bicycle down a busy street. The bike wasn't much to look at, but it held great sentimental value. It was a gift from his late father, painstakingly restored by Marcus himself. He stopped by a shop window to inspect some repair tools. Officer Thomas Gray noticed Marcus and approached. He smiled, but not in a friendly way. It was the kind of smile dripping with superiority. His eyes immediately fixated on the bike, deeming it unfit for a well-dressed black man. "Whose bike is this?" Thomas asked loudly as he walked closer. "Stolen, huh?" Marcus turned, his calm face betraying a flicker of tension. "It's mine." Thomas laughed derisively. "Yours? People without money ride bikes like this. What are you doing with such a piece of junk?" A small crowd began to gather, murmuring amongst themselves. Some people pulled out their phones to record the scene. "Got papers for it?" Thomas asked mockingly, clearly enjoying the situation. He inspected the bike, ignoring Marcus's response. "I don't have to prove anything to you, officer," Marcus said firmly. "I'm just going about my business." "That's where you're wrong," Thomas interrupted with a sneer. "I have reason to believe this bike is stolen." He grabbed the handlebars of the bike, glaring at Marcus. Marcus held his composure, took a deep breath, and said evenly, "You're exceeding your authority." From the crowd, voices began to rise. "This is too much!" "He didn't do anything." One elderly woman, Mrs. Johnson, stepped forward to intervene. "Officer, you have no right to treat him like this." "Stay out of police business, ma'am," Thomas snapped at her. Marcus noticed a patrol car approaching. Stepping back, he said calmly, "Let's wait for your colleague to sort this out." The wail of the siren grew closer, and the tension escalated. Thomas smirked, expecting backup to support his actions. Marcus remained composed, confident that the truth would prevail. The patrol car stopped, and Sergeant Mary Green, a seasoned officer who knew Marcus Williams well, stepped out. The scene made her tense instantly. A crowd surrounded Officer Thomas, who stood with overconfident swagger, gripping Marcus's bike. "What's going on here?" Green demanded sternly, scanning the crowd. "Just handling this suspicious character," Thomas replied dismissively, gesturing at Marcus. "I suspect the bike is stolen." Green's eyes narrowed as she studied Marcus, then Thomas. She knew Marcus to be someone who avoided trouble. "Marcus, is everything all right?" she asked, ignoring Thomas's words. "This officer thinks I stole my own bike," Marcus responded evenly, though his tense eyes betrayed his emotions. Thomas frowned, his confidence wavering. "Wait, you know him?" "Better than you do," Green snapped, her gaze turning icy. Without a word, Marcus pulled an ID from his pocket and handed it to Thomas. "I believe this will clear up any doubts," Marcus said. Thomas took the ID reluctantly, glanced at it, and turned pale. The name on the card read, Marcus Williams, Police Commissioner. "Commissioner?" Thomas stammered, his voice faltering. The crowd murmured loudly, some laughing, others recording the unfolding drama. Green folded her arms, her voice turning cold. "Care to explain your behavior, officer?" I was just following protocol," Thomas stuttered, his bravado evaporating. "Protocol?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Mocking questions? Public humiliation? That's your protocol?" The crowd erupted into applause. Thomas looked down, fumbling for words. Green stepped closer and said quietly, "We'll have a serious conversation back at the station." Marcus addressed the crowd, then turned to Thomas. "This isn't about my bike. It's about how you treat people who don't fit your stereotypes. Today, you're lucky it was me, and not someone without my status." Thomas nodded mutely, unable to meet Marcus's gaze. As the crowd dispersed, Marcus knew this was only the beginning of a much larger reckoning. The incident didn't go unnoticed. Videos captured by onlookers went viral on social media. Headlines like "Police Officer Humiliates Black Man Unaware He's the Commissioner" sparked a firestorm. Online debates flared, with some condemning Thomas's actions, while others rushed to defend him, citing the challenges of policing. At the station the next day, the atmosphere was heavy with tension. Thomas sat in a conference room across from Marcus and Sergeant Green. Clips from the viral videos, which had amassed millions of views, played on a screen before them. "Well, Officer Thomas," Marcus began, his tone icy but controlled. "Care to explain why you thought you had the right to humiliate a citizen without cause?" Thomas squirmed in his seat. I was acting in the interest of public safety. The bike looked suspicious and he who?" Green interrupted sharply. "You mean a black man looked suspicious?" "No," Thomas replied quickly, his face reddening. "I just thought the situation was unusual." "Unusual?" Marcus leaned forward. "So skin color makes someone unusual to you?" Thomas fell silent, realizing any defense would only deepen his predicament. The backlash reached beyond Thomas. Public trust in the police, already fragile, was further eroded. Demands for reform grew louder, fueled by protests and hashtags like #Justice for Marcus and #End Police Bias. A week later, the city held a public forum. Residents, police officers, and activists gathered to discuss the incident and broader issues. The event was live-streamed, and tension filled the room. Marcus addressed the crowd, his voice steady but resolute. "This case revealed not just individual errors, but systemic flaws that we can no longer ignore. Everyone deserves respect, regardless of skin color, social status, or position in society." His words were met with thunderous applause, though some officers sat silently, arms crossed. Among them was Thomas, his head bowed. After the forum, Thomas approached Marcus, his face serious, his voice trembling. "Commissioner, I want to apologize, not just to you, but to everyone I may have unfairly judged. I thought I was upholding the law, but I was enforcing my own biases instead." Marcus looked at him intently. "Apologies are the first step. The real work is in changing your actions." Thomas nodded. "I'm ready, whatever it takes." He enrolled in cultural competency training and began attending community meetings. Over weeks, he reflected on his biases and worked to undo them. Meanwhile, Marcus spearheaded sweeping reforms: mandatory training for all officers, hotlines for reporting bias, and community police dialogues. Months later, at one such meeting, Thomas stood up. "I was once the barrier between you and justice," he confessed. "But thanks to Marcus Williams, I've learned to listen, not judge. Today, I want to be part of the change." His admission shocked many, but was met with applause. On the city square months later, at a celebration of the reforms, Marcus and Thomas stood side by side. Watching the community laugh and connect, Marcus said, "We did it." "No," Thomas replied. "This is just the beginning." The story ends with hope, proof that even one confrontation can spark change that reshapes a community.